All right. Thank you all for joining. This is the informational webinar for On-Farm Grant 2026. We'll be here for about an hour talking about the details of the program and answering your questions. You may notice that Zoom looks a little different than it might have before. We're using a webinar feature, which just means that folks who are panelists like myself and Bahia will have video and microphone, and folks who are attendees will have the chat and the Q&A section in order to submit questions or chat with us along the way. So feel free to use those if any questions come up through the process. At the end of the slides, we'll have an open Q&A. So if you raise your hand using the raise hand function, we can give you permissions to use the microphone if you're like, I have a question that I don't really know how to type out. And we can do that towards the end. So thank you all for being here, and let's jump in. So today we're going to talk about what is on-farm grants. A lot of you may already know. Timeline and process, awards and limitations, eligibility requirements. Then we're also going to talk about how you can apply, how your applications are reviewed, what is required of you after receiving an award, and how you can request help during the application period. And then we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So to start, what is on-farm grants? This is the same thing as it's been last year. So the purpose of the fund is to support on-farm infrastructure projects for producers who are growing and selling fruits and vegetables within Louisiana. The goal of the fund is to bolster our local food system, to fund an increase in the fruit and vegetable production in the state that are grown here and that make it to market. So what is the timeline for this year's grant? The application period will open this coming Wednesday, July 1st, and it will be open for 2 months, closing the evening of September 1st. During this application period, you can request support from our statewide network of technical assistance providers who are ready to answer any questions and provide support for you as you put your project and your application together. The last day you can request support from that network is August 24th in order to allow time for them to have availability to speak with you and for you to implement any changes that their support may have provided to you. And we'll talk a little more about that at the end. The review period is September 2nd to November 19th. It's about 2.5 months. In this period, you won't really hear from us a whole lot. We'll be doing internal review of your applications. We'll be scoring them, meeting as a team to decide on the applications. And then in early December is when you can expect a notification from us about the determination on your application. One other thing to consider when putting your application together is that the project you propose for the grant should be one that can be completed within 1 year of that award. So if you're thinking of a longer term project on your farm that may take 3 years, think of what you could do in the next calendar year to reach those later goals. And that should be what you put forward in this application. So award amounts and limitations. This part is the same as the prior 2 years. The minimum award is $2,000 and the maximum award is $50,000. However, the maximum award over the last 3 years is $50,000. So if you're someone who received an award from us in 2024 or 2025, consider those amounts when you're asking for an amount this year. So for example, not a lot of folks got awards in both years, but in the instance you did, let's say you got 7,000 2 years ago, 10,000 last year, the most you could ask for this year is 33,000. So just keep that in mind. And now that we've done this grant 2 years so far, we have a little bit of metrics to share about how common different awards are. The most common award amount, most frequently provided amount is $5,000. The average amount is about 8,000. So we have granted around 14 to 20,000, and as low as 2,000, with the average being about 8. And again, the most common is 5,000. In how many awards actually go out. So 30% of the applications we receive will see an award offer. And we get about 120 applications every year about. And so 30 to 40 people will see an award offer from that 120 some odd applications. Okay, so amended awards. This year, we're treating amended awards differently than last year. We got a lot of great feedback from everyone who was part of the on-farm grant process last year, and we are so thankful to have that kind of communication with everyone. We want to create products and projects that work best for you all. So amended awards are being treated differently this year. Um, we will offer an amended award for folks who have a project that may have been broken out into pieces, and we will give maybe for that one piece um, that amount of money, as opposed to here's the whole budget for my whole project, and then we just throw out an arbitrary lower number. That can be very frustrating. So, no more wholesale reduction of your project's award amount requested. And I'll show some examples of what we mean when we talk about distinct projects or phases of a project so we can kind of better understand that. Um, our reviewers want to make sure that the funds you do receive are actually impactful for your farm. So, being able to show a complete and well thought out project really helps us understand your farm and your project's goals. So, what does this sort of change in amended awards mean for you all? No more arbitrary reduction of the award amount. It does mean that larger projects are less likely to be awarded. And it does mean that laundry list applications that just list a bunch of things that you need, but don't tie those things to a planned project are also less likely to be awarded. And then another limitation we have this year is large equipment. So the maximum award you could receive for large equipment, such as a tractor or any other kind of large piece of equipment for the farm, is 10,000. We're trying to have these funds have as much impact across the state as possible. So we're prioritizing lower cost solutions, such as used equipment, wherever that may be possible. So to dig in a little deeper of what we mean when we say phases or projects when it comes to amended awards, I know we're looking at a spreadsheet and that might cause a few people to a little hesitation. Um, Fear not. We're not going to talk about spreadsheets right now. We're mostly talking about how you think about your project. We will have in 2 weeks from right now, so the 10th of July at 3 p.m., will be a Spreadsheet 101 Zoom session where you'll meet with me and we can talk about Google Sheets and how to make spreadsheets work for you. Um, if you're like, I don't even want to do spreadsheets, and you can take these same principles and write it on a piece of paper that we can read it and take a picture and send that, that's also totally fine. So both are acceptable. So in the instance of a laundry list versus, let's say, a phased project, for this particular project, these numbers are fake. So don't mind those. We've got lots of different things named here, but it's really hard for us to tell what line items match to what action is happening on the farm or what goal is intended for the farm. So in this instance, our reviewers have two options. We could either award the full almost $40,000 or we offer zero because we don't know what is a good amount to offer other than that. So what you can do instead, and I know it looks a little complicated maybe, don't worry. We'll talk about it at the spreadsheet, but you could also write it out, like I said. And these are all the same lines, all the same dollar amounts, but this better helps us understand that these are the items and the total amount you need to have good soil and water prep for the season. These are the items and total amount you need to get growing. These are the items and amounts you need to harvest and to store your yield. Same total at the end of the day, but this allows our reviewers to say, So you may have good soil and you may have good seeds, but you have no cool bot, you have no storage capabilities. Now we know if we offer 20,000, that's gonna be able to be accomplished for you, as opposed to not knowing what that right number is and maybe offering an incomplete amount. So it's one way of looking at it. Another example we have is for this project, again, just items listed. We don't really know how they interact with one another. And we've got a project. So for this particular person, again, same line items, same dollar amounts. They're actually proposing two different projects. She's saying, I want soil and starts and seeds to incorporate new crops on my farm that I haven't yet grown. And I also want to hire a plumbing contractor to help out with some irrigation issues I'm having on the farm. This type of breakdown, along with the paragraph answers that you'll give on the application, will help us to better understand. Okay, maybe she hasn't tried blackberries, sweet potatoes, and cucumbers, but she's already doing other crops that are doing well, but those crops are at risk because there's an irrigation issue. So now we're going to put our focus on let's offer 16,000 so that what she is growing will continue to grow, and then new crops can be introduced later. So just some examples as you think through what the goals of your farm are and how you may want to present that to our reviewers. And again, if you have any questions, the Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. You can type those in, or the chat is available as well. Okay, so eligibility, these have not changed from last year. So those of you who are coming back to the grant, you should be familiar with them. Eligible farms are those that are currently in business, growing and selling in Louisiana, under 100 acres. You may be a nonprofit farm if the operations of your farm focus on producing a substantial amount of food for markets. So if your main focus is production for sale, that's okay if you're a nonprofit farm. Eligible projects are ones that focus on fruits, vegetables, and mushrooms, and that specifically support the expansion or continuation of that produce, either in production or in sales. We will consider hydroponics and aquaponics, and we will consider labor costs if those are specialized labor, such as a plumber or electrician or other tradesmen. But we will not consider labor costs that is your own labor on the farm or the labor of your staff. And then to put a finer point on what is eligible in terms of products, there are some value add, but it only is acceptable to have minimally processed whole fruits and vegetables. So chopping, freezing, washing, packing, deshelling, all of that is acceptable. That's all lightly processed. And those lightly processed products should be also grown by you. So fruits and vegetables you have grown that you're also processing are acceptable. More value added, more extensive value added processing is not eligible. Things like jams, juices, pickles, popsicles, those are not eligible for this grant. Some more details on eligibility. So ineligible projects are meat production, honey, those more extensive value added products that we were talking about, plant starts, fruit tree production, seed production, and floriculture. So same as last year, if your output of your farm is to sell a plant start for someone else to grow, that is not eligible. If your farm is purchasing plant starts to grow and then harvest the fruit from, that is an eligible thing. So nursery products, unfortunately, are not considered for this grant. Again, labor costs to pay yourself and your staff are not eligible. The purchase of land is not eligible, and reimbursement projects are not eligible. So if your application includes, I already purchased this tractor implement and I would like funds to cover that expense that I already made, that is not an eligible project for this grant. Okay, so how to apply? Very similar to last year. This is a screenshot of last year's application. This year's will look identical with different words, but it's the same, images and everything. It'll be an online form that you'll fill out and then attach certain documents to. That form becomes available next Wednesday on our website. So keep an eye out there. We'll also post on social media about it. The form is going to ask you basic contact and farm information. It's going to ask you substantive questions about your project and your farm. And it will also ask for document attachments, which we'll talk about on the next slide. A sample of the application in PDF form will be available on our website. If you are the kind of thinker who likes to print and write and figure out your application that way, that's going to be available. However, if you email us applications like that, those are not accepted. You will still have to come to the form online and fill it out. But for those who like to be more tactile with your thoughts, we'll have that option available for you. So the attachments, you'll need to submit a signed W-9. We'll have a link on the form to a blank W-9 so it's readily accessible. And last year it was suggested to have a budget document. This year it is required to have a budget document. We will provide a sample like last year. And we're going to have that Spreadsheet 101 webinar for those who would like to learn a little bit more about how Google Sheets work. And like I mentioned, if you just write out your budget legibly and take a good picture of it, that's also totally fine. But we do need to see a budget of some kind. Some optional attachments are quotes. So if you're getting equipment or specialized labor, having a quote from the retailer or the tradesman is incredibly helpful. Letters of support are also nice to have, but not required. However, you cannot ask for letters of support from LSAC organizations. And all of those organizations are listed on our website. So take a look there, make sure that, if you reach out to like Sprout or Shreveport Green, Fightingville Fresh, just to name a few, those folks can't write you a letter of support. Anyone else in your network can, and we'd love to hear about the folks who know about your farm. Other things you might want to consider attaching: plans or schematics of your project. So last year we had someone print out like a Google Earth image of their land and kind of mark on it how they wanted to increase their fencing, things like that. Really help us have a better idea of your project. And anything you think could help reviewers to understand your project, we'd love to see. So make sure to throw those things on there. I see a question in the Q&A. Are potential vineyards farm operations eligible? I don't believe so. Bahia, do you have a good answer for that?
I love it when we get a brand new question.
Yeah.
My first instinct is that wine production is not lightly processed, that that would be value added and that would be complex processing, and so would not be qualified. However, if there is an aspect to this that is not what I am thinking of, then we would be more than happy to have a conversation about that specific issue. And you would do that with one of our technical assistance providers. And then that if it is incredibly complex, we bring the whole committee together to evaluate how this fits or doesn't fit. So we take these questions really seriously. But my first instinct is that making wine is a very complex processing, so would not qualify.
So thank you, Wisdom, for the question. And again, be sure to reach out if you want a finer point to our TA providers. We would love to dig in a little deeper. Are dehydrated products considered lightly processed, like dried elderberries? Don't think I've seen this question yet either.
Y'all bringing the A game today. I love it. Um, I think that that would depend on the end use of that product. So if you're simply just dehydrating a product, a whole, unadulterated, nothing added to it, and then selling that as the finished product, I think that that could be considered. Um, I would say I would be looking for indications in the narrative that tie this into preventing waste. If you have an overproductive crop in one particular season, and that this is a way to transition that from a potential loss into a preserved product that you can sell and extend your selling season for longer. We would be looking at, at a robustly painted picture about how this works in your operation. And otherwise, though, this would be considered lightly processed.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so let's get back to the slides. Keep the questions coming, though. Love those. More on applications. Let's see. So one thing we wanted to highlight was for applications, please only submit one application per farm and farmer. So if you are a farmer that is associated with two different farm businesses and you want to apply for one for each farm business, make sure that you apply for one. And if you have a business partner, have that person apply for the other. It creates some confusion on the reviewer side when one person's name is associated with multiple applications. So just make sure to, tap your business partners for that kind of support if that is the case for you. Cooperatives may also apply. You may see some additional questions on the application if you are a co-op, things like when did your cooperative form, how do you work together, things like that. The farmer who is associated with the cooperative that applies for the cooperative may not also apply for another grant. That's the same one application per farm and farmer. So if you are part of a cooperative and you submit an application for that co-op and you also have a separate farm, tap a business partner or have someone else at the co-op apply for that one. So we keep it all like a one-to-one with applications and farms. And again, if you have any further questions about how that works, our TA folks are here to help talk, one-on-one about that. Okay, so another couple short things about applications. We highly, highly suggest that the use of AI for the application should be limited. The reason being is that we want to hear your voice. We want to hear your vision. We don't want to hear the most perfectly polished answer or anything like that. We want to hear what you have in your brain for this farm, for this project. So be sure to, limit your use of AI when you're filling out, especially the narrative part of the application. Similarly, the grant is not for farms that solely aggregate produce and who do not grow their own produce. Aggregation is an important part of our food system. However, for this grant, we're trying to support directly to your produce that you grow. So be sure to limit your projects to those specific crops. All right, so how are the applications reviewed? Same as last year. A good application is not ranked by your technical writing skill, but by the merit of your project. So make sure to put your best pitch forward. You can submit supplemental material that might help make your point, like we mentioned earlier. Our applications are reviewed by a stipended and diverse panel of farmers and aggregators and farmers market managers. So folks who are very familiar with the work that you all do. We'll also have a public rubric. So each of our reviewers have a scoring scale and rubric that they're going to reference when they review your application, and then give certain scoring amounts based on different categories. We will have a public version of that rubric available when the application goes live. So be sure to check that out. It will help you kind of better understand what are the areas our reviewers are most concerned about when it comes to your application. Okay, so let's say you are offered an award. What does it look like once you become an on-farm grant awardee? So in order to get your disbursement, first, the funds you get from this grant are taxable. So make sure that the W-9 we have on file when you submit your application is signed, and that the name on that W-9 matches the name that you want on your disbursement check. So if you would like the check written to your business, make sure your W-9 is your business name and your EIN number. If you want it your name, have it be your name and your social security number. So make sure those are correct for you when you submit it. And then you will also have to sign an award agreement, which states the following, which is that second box on the right. You'll have a 6-month report back. So 6 months after receiving your funds, which is usually May or June for most folks, you'll hear from us again over email, asking you to submit photos of your project progress and a paragraph update and a few other short questions. It won't be nearly as many questions as the application itself. And then at the year mark, which will be in December or January, we'll ask the same information again. A farm visit will be required, but you will be notified 2 weeks or more before that planned farm visit to come check out your project and how it's going. If you do not complete the report backs and we don't hear from you, or if your report backs show that the funds are being misused towards a project that was not the scope that was awarded, we may request a return of those award funds. And that language will be on the award agreement. So you'll know exactly what all of that means before you even sign your award. And we're more than happy to talk about any of these post-award processes before you sign. So don't be shy. Okay, and then how to request help. So we've got a statewide team of technical assistance providers that are ready to help you out with this application. You can go to our website, the same place you signed up for this webinar, at lsac.org/onfarmgrant. That's all lowercase. I don't know why it's all uppercase on here. And then on there will be a button to take you to this request form with this funky link over here. And as a reminder, please submit any requests for assistance by August 24th at the latest. You can absolutely do that sooner. It is suggested to do it sooner. But August 24th is the last date you can request this kind of support for the application. However, this TA team is available all year round to help you with any kinds of farm assistance, questions, issues that you may have, from business questions, growing questions, sourcing or sales outlets questions. We're here to support any needs that you may have. So don't be shy. We love hanging out with you guys. So that is my last slide. And so if anyone has questions, throw them in the Q&A or the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll, allow you to get off mute and we can talk through any questions y'all have. Oh, go ahead, Bahia.
Thanks. I wanted to circle back to the expanded and clarified budget formats. I don't know if you want to show them on the screen or not. I just wanted to offer a little bit more detail on some things that aren't a requirement, but could help your proposals. So when you look at this template that Hannah has created to sort of break your proposed budget into little buckets, it's really, really great when we're reading the narratives. Sorry. where you address your budget in the narrative in a way that helps us understand, do you need to have all of this in order for any of it to work? Right. And that's a really legitimate thing to say. Which is like, if I like, there's these 4 different things that have to happen in order to get this outcome that I'm really trying to achieve. We really welcome you to tell us that story and why it's working that way. That helps us. Additionally, if you are saying like, these would all be really great to have, and also, if I just got one thing, the priority would be this, this, or this, like, tell us the story about why and how you're thinking of the project as it relates to the budget so that we can figure out how we might be able to best help you with an award. Additionally, that kind of information helps us figure out how we go and look for more funding to try and make more of these style grants available in the state. And so the stories that you tell us in that narrative, and again, we really don't care at all about spelling, grammar, punctuation, as long as we understand what you are trying to tell us. We aren't going to be sitting there with red pens correcting spelling, and not at all. Like, that's not it. We, again, Hannah said, like, we really want you to avoid AI, and we just want to hear things in your voice. And we aren't thinking at all about grammar and punctuation and spelling when we're reading these. And so take some of that space in that narrative to help us understand your priorities and your needs. That's really, really helpful for us. And if you tie it to the budget. So just a little tidbit of things that we might be looking for and that make your proposal very well, make it a very robust proposal. Question in the chat, is there a set limit on projects you can list? There's a set budget that you can propose. But if you are, say you are requesting $2,000 and you're going to request $2,000 and you want to get seeds and you want to get a really nice long handled implement, say a really fancy stirrup hoe or something with a really good long wooden handle that's very ergonomic, and you want to get a really nice irrigation sprayer for the end of your hose, and you want to do all these things because you're saying, like, with this, my efficiency increases, the ergonomics are better, I'm hurting myself less, and these seeds are a much higher quality seed and they've got a greater germination rate than the ones I usually get. And you can paint us that picture. That's where that storytelling capacity on your part comes into play. But the real limiting factor on this is a demonstration of need and how it helps you produce more fruits and vegetables so that more people in our state can eat Louisiana grown fruits and vegetables. So those are sort of the limitations.
So
2000. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh yeah, of course. So our minimum is 2,000 and our maximum is 50,000. So if you are thinking of proposing multiple projects on your application, each of those projects need to be at least 2,000. So just have that in mind when you start thinking of the different chunks of work you want to complete.
And also, if you weren't here at the beginning when Hannah went over this slide, pay attention to the most commonly awarded amount. We are working with a very finite budget. This isn't an unlimited Black Amex card. This is a very finite budget. And so our average, most common awarded amount is 5,000. Average awarded amount is 8. And so that's also just the reality of the budget that we're working with.
Ms. Margaret. There you are. You can come off mute.
Okay, I had a question. Is a farm track number required?
No, I answered that one in the chat too. And so, no, a farm track or a USDA Farm Service Agency farm number and track number are not requirements for this grant.
Thank you.
You bet.
You will need either an EIN or as a licensed business or your social security number. One of those two things will be required in order to receive funds.
And that's what you fill out on that W-9 form. So
any other questions? We are here for y'all. I'm going to scoot us back to the last slide. These slides will also be available on our website. Yes, Ms. Evans.
Freeze-dried products considered lightly packed, and if so, would requesting funding for branding or packaging those products be eligible for grant funding?
So I heard two questions there. I heard, is freeze drying lightly processed or value added processing? And again, I would consider freeze drying to be very similar to just regular dehydrating. And so that would be light processing as long as they weren't adulterated products and the product that you were selling was that lightly processed freeze dried fruit or vegetable. And then the second question I heard is, can grant funds be used for packaging and labeling? And I would say that the intention of this grant is to increase the production and accessibility of fresh fruits and vegetables across the state of Louisiana. And so I think there would need to be a compelling story around, one, how the freeze drying products help within the spectrum of your whole farm operation towards that goal of increasing fresh fruit and vegetable availability across the state and making it accessible. And then same with packaging. How is that helping increase production and increase access? And if you are thinking that you're feeling stumped, I'll throw in a freebie and just say, some markets, like say our farmers market here at the Alexandria Farmers Market, we require that you have product labels on your things. And so if you need to get accepted into a market that requires that your packaging have labels on it or things be in packages, then you would talk about how you would be able to access a new farmer's market and you would increase your sales and more people would have access. I would also encourage you to think about if your product would be SNAP eligible. And so would you be addressing all sorts of market channels with that product? But again, keeping in mind that the goal of this grant is to help us increase the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables grown, harvested, and raised in Louisiana and accessible by Louisiana individuals and households and institutions.
Okay, that was really good. I wish I would have had a recorder on. But I got the gist of it.
So you'll be able to watch this again. So you can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Margaret.
I see in the Q&A section, can we be emailed copies of this slide deck? So the slide deck and the recording right now will be available on our website early next week. If you're already on the LSAC email listserv, you'll receive a notice on July 1st when we announce that the grant is officially open with a link to where this recording and these slides exist. So you'll probably see that on Wednesday.
And I see in the chat, if you are a new farmer this year, are you able to apply for this grant, specifically irrigation? And so we have not excluded new and beginning farmers from this grant. We want you to tell us that you're currently in production. You need to be in production. You need to have a harvest and you need to have sold produce. And so if you haven't done that, then this isn't going to be a great grant fit for you. If you haven't grown anything yet and you haven't sold anything yet. So it's hard to know which new farmer this year. Do you have crops in the ground? Do you putting things to market? And irrigation is a wildly important item for increasing fruit and vegetable production as our state continues to face increased droughts in between our increased odds of flooding. So irrigation and systems that support year-round growth of fresh fruits and vegetables definitely can be an important component of helping us achieve the increase that we're looking for. And Alicia, seeing increased insurance costs eligible for funding to access new markets. Yeah, I'd actually say that would be a fantastic thing to propose. And I would love to see how the farm would be changing their costing and pricing structure to carry those insurance costs moving forward beyond the life of this grant, because that is going to be a recurring cost. If that market proves to be valuable, I would love to have an understanding of how the farm was going to absorb those repeating costs after the grant, or if it's just a pilot project and you're going to try a new market for a year and see if the pricing you can get at that market is able to support that increased cost and just the time and labor that it goes into, getting that insurance policy and making sure it's worth the money that you're paying for it. So I'd be happy to see either sides of that story come out in the narrative for sure. Great. So if your crops are in the ground and you're having them sold before you submit this proposal to us, which you, depending on what you're growing, as long as it's not maple trees or something like that. If you've got some radishes that you can harvest and sell, then tell us about that in the story. Tell us what you know. And also tell us about if you've got other lived experience that's going to support these types of activities in your farm, and you're bringing knowledge into this space where you aren't starting with a blank slate. Tell us how you got to this point and how you're planning to continue it moving forward. Just don't be afraid to invest in that storytelling part of the narrative.
So we have a little bit left in the hour if any other questions come up. Something I also wanted to name was on our website, lsac.org/on-farm-grant. There is a link there to a page that has more details about the previous awards that we've given. So you can see who was given awards, and for the 2025 cycle, you can see for what kinds of projects we awarded. So that might help kind of jog your creativity when you're trying to think of what do I want to put forward. Again, that's on the website. There's a button near the top that says prior year awards or something to that effect, and you'll see the information there. Let's see. There you go, Miss Evans.
Yeah, I had a question in regards to bookkeeping and accounting. I'm fairly new in the farming industry, and I found that record keeping and bookkeeping are highly, highly important in knowing what crops are producing well or not producing well, when to rotate, when to plant, and so forth. And also cost of what's being used or whatever. So does that, would that qualify as a eligible project or for funding?
I'm not sure I heard the question in there. Were you asking if bookkeeping services would be an eligible?
If bookkeeping and accounting services from a professional be considered necessary or eligible for grant funding, the cost of it.
That's a great question. And I think, again, I'm going to go back to the intention of this grant is to support an increase in the production of fresh fruits and vegetables and their accessibility for Louisiana individuals and households. So bookkeeping of some sort is an essential service on a farm. There's a lot of record keeping if you're trying to run a business, that's for sure. I think that I probably wouldn't choose that if I were writing a grant for this proposal. That wouldn't be the project I chose to submit to this, even though, because I'm a snazzy grant writer and I've been doing this a while, I could tell you how not having to spend 8 hours a week on my bookkeeping means that I've got 8 more hours to spend in my fields actually growing and harvesting fruits and vegetables. I could make that point. It's just going to be a bit of a stretch for this funding, in all honesty. If that's the thing, then I would expect a really compelling story in this narrative about why it's vital and how it will directly lead. And to do that, I would be looking at examples of how you're managing your time and how you're tracking your time and how this shift would be measured in an increase in pounds of food harvested and sold or those sorts of things. And so if you're feeling like really froggy and you're a great storyteller around this, you could go for it. It wouldn't be the thing I would choose to go with.
Okay, thank you.
All right, y'all, we have about 10 minutes left. With that time, I'll show y'all a quick preview of where to request support. So you'll click that link on our website and you'll come here to a reminder at the top when the last day to request support is. This is a link back to the website so you can get back to that original source of information. You'll just put in the date, your contact information, your farm name and address, and then what kind of questions you have. The farm name and address, the address specifically is important so we can route you to a technical service provider in your region, someone you may already know, or someone who would be really good for you to know if you don't know that person yet. So you'll just fill that out, submit the request. That will notify one of our team members and you'll be routed to the best person to answer your questions. So that's what that'll look like. All right, y'all. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you all for coming and for the great questions you brought. We love getting new questions. And yeah, don't be shy to ask for support. We got folks here ready to help you out. And yeah, we look forward to reading your proposals this year. Thank you all. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Happy Friday, y'all.